it's okay to be men.
Yeah.
It's okay. And it's okay to be a man in a relationship. And actually, I take a shot at women who accept beta men, right? So I just learned this actually from a nail seal buddy of mine. You have the alpha, you have the beta, and then you have the omega, right? And the alpha male is the one that women, especially somebody who's an alpha female like myself, is longing for. It's the alpha male. It's the one who brings all the testosterone to the relationship, right? It's the one who can allow, if you bring all the testosterone to the relationship, what happens is for the alpha female, it allows us to bring all of our femininity to the relationship. We can basically let the guard down and we can love men in the way that they need to be loved, which is women. If you are listening to this, your man does not need to be loved the way women are loved. That is not accurate. Men need to be empowered. That is how you love them. You empower them to go out and to be, the dominant force of the family, to be the head of the family, to lead the family and to lead the relationship.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today I have a special guest. You might want to get the kids out of the room if they're listening and you don't want to hear some foul language. Erin, as you can see, she's ambitious AF, and you might know what that means, but she's no holds barred, but she's awesome. She's a performance coach, a neuroscience student, a tyrant crusher, 2 alpha defender, which I love, an all-around badass chick. And like I said, she's the host of the Ambitious AF podcast. I met her a few weeks ago, hit it off, talked with her on the phone for a while, and I said, I absolutely got to have you on the podcast. I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself and we'll get on with the conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you to all of the listeners to tuning in. I'm Erin Whitehead, and I guess this is the moment where I tell you a bunch of information so that you keep listening. So
That's right.
that's what I'm going to try to do. So you might hear people call me the ambitious AF girl, and we'll get to that in a minute. I want you to know what they called me as a kid. They called me stupid. They called me weird. They called me ugly, freckled face. I even got mocked by my own family, actually. So it was really hard for me to make friends. It was hard for me to connect with others. It was definitely hard for me to feel that sense of belonging, which left me with zero confidence, feelings of depression, and suicidal fantasies at the age of 15. And since I felt completely worthless at all times, I decided to run away at the age of 16, and everything basically went to shit from there. I got caught living in a trap house with pimps and felons and addicts and thieves, and how I avoided being hooked on meth, how I avoided body piercings and doing jail time really still shocks me. But I ended up becoming a 2-time college dropout with no employable skills. I was drinking myself into shame spirals. I was living out of my car across the street from a trash dump. I battled anorexia and I wasn't eating for days at a time. I had a baby way too young. I barely had $12 to my name at any given time. I had developed a plan to die by suicide. And the entire time that all of this shit was happening, all I kept thinking was that society must have a plan for people like me. One, live hand to mouth forever. Two, never become anything other than a loser. And three, just basically die. But for me, there was this fire that burned really deep down inside of me. And I knew that I wanted more from my future, much more. I just didn't know how to get there. I didn't know the path until one day. How I describe it is I finally dusted off my courage and I found my fire and I embraced everything that I hated about myself. And I leaned into this weirdness of mine. I harnessed my dark side. And I started doing the real work that made me feel like a complete outsider in my own skin. Emotional work, physical work, mental toughness work, financial work. I strengthened my spirituality. I started to own my decisions and I started to take control of my life. And I got hyper focused on living with intention. And I basically cranked up my standards and I actually kept the promises that I made to myself. And I started learning how to exercise correctly and how to consume food in a way that supported a very healthy lifestyle. And I only accepted interpersonal relationships that were functional and supportive. And I began to chase my most ambitious desires, and I handled my shit once and for all. And I started to treat myself like a child of God. And then I looked around and I noticed I was on a different path. And that path was a very, very lonely path because I realized that I wasn't cut from the same cloth as the people that I was hanging around with. Okay. My personal minimum standards were basically, they dwarfed everybody else's. And my drive combined with my ambition, right? The size of Mount Everest, it was too much for my inner circle. So I was like, well, fuck these people. And I basically did a cannonball off the high dive straight into a new way of life. And I never looked back. And that's when I started writing down my innermost thoughts. And I started posting them on social media. So for the first time ever out loud, I started talking about my fear of embarrassment and my battle with body dysmorphia. And I encouraged people to start chasing their most ambitious desires. And I started calling bullshit out on the victim mentality and people who cut corners and the self entitlement narrative that basically begs people to give up on themselves. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I want to say like maybe 6 to 8 months after this started to happen, people started calling me a motivational speaker. And I was like, what? What? That was totally crazy to me. And truth be told, I was just really keeping tabs on my own journey. And I was using those posts as sort of markers for my ascent on the journey. And it was basically an open diary, which I still do to this day. And that's exactly how Ambitious AF was born. So, in case you're a little slow on the uptake, AF stands for as fuck. It's probably the number one direct message that I get from people. What does AF stand for? So, soon I started then teaching people how everything that I knew about being this dirt poor runaway to um, birthing a six-figure business model from scratch with nothing but relentless ambition. And I didn't use any kind of like bullshit coaching frameworks that don't do shit in real life. And now, if you ask me if I could narrow down all of the goals that I have into my life, it would be this, absolutely, without a doubt, unequivocally, dedicating myself to helping other people realize the importance of not being afraid to live, which I view as an obligation for myself, actually, which is why I'm so passionate about my mission, which is the reason why I exist on this planet, I believe, is to help people feel valued in a world that places everyone and everything else first. And if you read any of my posts on social media, um, and if you've listened this far, the takeaway that a lot of people have is like, shit, that girl swears like a sailor, which I just have to laugh at. And I feel like maybe I get that from my father, who served 2 tours in Vietnam for the United States Navy, right? But seriously, I basically am here to shove the reality of what it takes to win down your throat because you need that raw, unfiltered truth from somebody who actually gives a damn about you. And that is the heart and soul of Ambitious AF. It is unwavering resolve, it's unyielding spirit. And that's the kind of person that Ambitious AF attracts, actually, because if you ask me, we're never after just one thing. We are after all of it. We're after success and adventure and memories and experiences. So, yeah, I guess you could say we're a community of people who are driven and want more. Absolutely. And that includes life, liberty, and the pursuit of anybody who gets in the way. So, speaking of freedoms, you've got to know at this point, I exercise mine. I stand up for what's right, even if that means standing alone, especially if that means standing alone, which means I've been censored and I've been shadow banned, all in the name of tolerance. But I can promise you, what is more important than protecting the unborn and defending the Second Amendment and chasing happiness with the claw end of a hammer? And at the end of the day, community, here's what you should know about me. I want you to be able to handle your shit once and for all in your life. I'm here to make that happen. So let's dust off your courage and find your fire together because I promise you, nothing says fuck you to the people who don't believe in you than an awesome life lived with a big ass grin. That is who I am. Thank you for asking.
So, I think this is like 80, number 80, 82 of my podcast. That is definitely the most unique introduction I've got. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's awesome to hear. And I can't wait to unpackage some of the stuff that you said there. But we're going to start first with the question everybody gets asked on the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. And I cannot wait to hear what you say to this and what your definition is. But what
Okay.
is Erin's definition of vulnerability?
That's such a great question. I think if you had asked me this question even 3 years ago, I probably would have defined it the way that I feel like most people do when you ask this question. I feel like vulnerability is like the pop culture sexy word of the century, besides
Right.
burnout, which let's not get into that because I don't want to get on a soapbox. But I think people don't even come up with their own definition of vulnerability because we've all been told this mainstream sort of accepted definition, like not being afraid to express your emotions out loud. And then you either do it or you don't do it. So you're either vulnerable or you're not vulnerable, right? That's the mainstream definition that we're all used to. It's the definition that's printed in magazines, and that's the definition that gets double tapped on social media. But I think for me, this definition runs much, much deeper than this. When I think of vulnerability, the only definition that I could describe is the one that I relate to. So, vulnerability describes somebody who doesn't suppress their emotional violence from their past. You basically let it overwhelm you. And the madness that it creates within and inside becomes the beacon of light that you use to storm the gates of hell to get those who are currently lost and suffering. It's the hand that you extend to people who can't find their way. This type of vulnerability, to me, it borderlines even addiction. Most people will never understand the amount of emotional and violence that this type of person has experienced, which is exactly how that person can remain so calm in the face of anger and frustration and depression and anxiety and all of the bullshit that life brings you and loneliness that the type of journey that I'm on can bring. A vulnerable person has nothing to hide and they have more to give. That's exactly why these type of people can see they can see things that other people can't see. And that's why these type of people build things that last. I think this type of definition for this type of vulnerable person, if that's you think chaos basically is peaceful, right? Extremes are natural. Stress is fuel. Ambition is normal. And you're not afraid to treat every day as an experiment. You're somebody who spends all their time playing on the edge. You're chasing risks that other people would never even dream of taking. You're racing full speed with this unshakable commitment towards something bigger than yourself. And then you end up jumping from the cliff and you're ready to embrace your fate. That's exactly what a vulnerable person is. And if that's you listening, I want you to know something. Those who are this type of vulnerable, actually, let me put it in the other way. Those people who have not found this type of vulnerability within will be the first to call your type of vulnerability a curse. They're going to judge you and they're going to shame you and they're going to call you fucking insane. And I want you to let that emotional and violence of your past, I want you just to let it consume you completely. I want you to overdose on it. Vulnerability requires permission, basically. It's the place where you lose yourself and you find yourself at the exact same time. I want you to shake hands with that beast in your head. I do that every single day. It helps you bring clarity. It's a gift that you can offer the world. It's why you can stand up for what you believe in, even if that means standing alone. This is the only definition that I know how to give. And I can tell you it's absolutely worth fighting for in your life.
Well, love it. I love that's my favorite question because everybody has a different take on it, and I think that kind of depends on the path you have walked in life and where you sit right now in your life. It might mean a little something different, but then at the end of the day, they all can be related back to the same answer. It seems like with the people that I have on this show, and I love it. So let's get in. I want to get into something. I quoted you. I think I stole it from your LinkedIn or somewhere, but I want to dig into it a little bit because I agree with you 100%. As a society, we have never lived in a mentally weaker time. Everything is infested with ease and convenience. I want you to elaborate on that, and let's discuss it a little bit.
So if you're listening right now, I want you to buckle the fuck up because I have an answer to this question. And if you follow me on social media, you probably know what's coming. But if not, I'm going to bend your ear about something that pisses me the fuck off. So let's see if you feel the same way too. In America, we have a problem. When I look around, I have to be honest with you guys. Most people that I see are basically miserable. They're not being present with their kids. They're bellied up to a bar on a Wednesday afternoon, slamming alcohol. They're easily entertained by mind numbing bullshit on television. They're engaging in mental weakness. They're undisciplined, they're overweight, and they have no hope. I see the chaos around us. I see the complete destruction. I see the mainstream media encouraging you to be apathetic to your fellow human being and dividing us further as a nation. I see the Department of Education trying to parent our kids instead of teaching math and science. And the reason this is happening is because a small minority of people understand something that the everyday American hopefully is waking up to, and it's this. If the tyrannical elite can whittle you down to make you feel like you are nothing, if they can shame you long enough, if they can get you to feel hopeless and desperate about your life, they know that you are someone who they can easily control. And there are some listeners right now, maybe, I hope not, but they're like, oh my God, Erin, what? Are you kidding? You're speaking like a bunch of bullshit. The people who hold authority over us, the people who we've elected into office, the people who run the big pharma companies, they care about us. They want good for us. They're a part of what we're all going through. And I'm here to tell you guys listening, that's a hard fuck no. Those are people who pretend to be concerned. But if you watch their actions a whole lot closer, it's blatantly obvious that they aren't concerned about you, your family, your property, your health. They're not concerned about your sanity whatsoever. The blame stream media wants you to believe that ambition is wrong, that mental toughness is wrong, that building your ultimate life isn't for people like you. They want you to believe that we, the people, should believe that tyranny is good and communism is good and socialism is good. Big pharma and large corporations who push their political agendas and the diversity, equity, inclusion bullshit down everybody's throats and all of their employees, they want you to believe that chasing your most ambitious desires would be detrimental to your health and to your family and to your sanity and to your bank account and to society at large. And the social media motherfuckers want you to believe that ambition is wrong. They want you to believe that it's equivalent to some sort of mortal sin. And if you post anything about punishing the victim mentality, then you might as well hang yourself in shame. And oh, fuck, do they shame you? Because here comes the big fat target on your back. If you champion mental toughness, they shadow ban your social media account. They slap you in the mouth with restrictions against your speech. And they tell you how you're not being inclusive enough and diverse enough and equitable enough. And they try to make you feel foolish for speaking the truth or chasing ambition. And they whittle you down until they get you to self-censor. And why does any of this matter? Because the anti-ambitious narrative, the anti-mental toughness narrative is a threat to our sovereignty, to our economy, to the culture that this country was built upon, and to the future generations that are looking to us for guidance. And here's what I want you to know. Ambition should be embraced. Obsession over your goals should be embraced. Sovereignty over self should be embraced. Mental toughness should be embraced and taught as a required class in elementary school, along with ambition and finance. Yet the blame stream media, who clearly hates you and is morally compromised at the highest of levels, has decided to spoon feed you an apathetic narrative that encourages you to give up on yourself. And they get you to believe that you don't have what it takes to win in life, because the weaker you are on an individual level, then the weaker we are on a family level. And the weaker we are as a family unit, the weaker we are as a society. And a weak society is easier to control. And that, my friends, is the whole point of their anti ambitious narrative. So when I talk to you about chasing your most ambitious desires, and I remind you that it's your obligation to keep going and never quit on yourself, and to teach others what you wish you would have known, and to be the parent that you always wish you had, and to win big. And when you do, win loudly so that you can show the next generation what's possible. And in doing so, this is exactly how you contribute to a better America. How can you be shamed into not pursuing this kind of life? How can you be afraid of this? How can you not want to be the most fit and healthy that you've ever been? How can you not want to be the most effective and productive that you've ever been in your life? How can you not want to level up your ambition and your skill sets and sharpen your iron for the sake of your family and your last name? And how can you be unwilling to do any of these things? Because that's what you're doing, by the way, when you don't stand with your shoulders forward and awake, when you don't become a better version of yourself, you lose. And by the way, that's why you feel like shit all the time and why we're losing as a society. That was a really long-winded definition, but that's like what I have to tell you guys. Like I would need you to like I'm grabbing you by the shoulders right now, and I need you to listen to everything that I just said. I hope that it resonates with your listeners.
I'm sure it will. And when the whole time you're talking about that and some of the stuff, I think of the quote that's "Give them bread and give them circuses."
Yeah, give
You
them
know,
cake. Give them
yep,
cake. Yeah,
yep. I think about that all the time when we're inundated with sports 24/7, and we have the wrong people in positions that our kids are looking up to, give them bread and give them circuses, and the population is easier to control. I
that's
think
right.
we're living that more and more every day in our society. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and that brings me to the next thing is leadership. So again, I'm really curious to see what is leadership when I ask you that. What's your definition of it? And then I'll just ask the question now so you can cover it all in one big shot. When you're talking to leaders or so-called leaders, what are some of the things that you run into? And I'll be curious to know: do you run into some leaders that are scared to be themselves because they're afraid of what the world's going to say to them, so they're not the greatest version of themselves that they could be because they're holding back? Take all that away. You've got it.
Yeah, I think the last question you asked is totally rhetorical, but I'll go back to basically what is leadership. I hear a lot of very textbook definitions on this quite a bit. And I basically think a leader is somebody who can lead themselves. If you can't lead yourself, how can you possibly lead other people? But we see that companies promote people into positions of leadership, and their personal life is in total chaos, and their teams are usually in total chaos because of it. So I did a whole podcast on this. It's called, Why You Feel Like Shit All the Time. It's because you're not keeping the promises that you make to yourself. If you're a leader and you are a leader of yourself, then you have goals that you have set for yourself. And I mean like ambitious goals, not like I'm going to get up and brush my teeth and make it to work on time. Like that's not a goal. That's just the way that you pay your bills on time,
Right.
hopefully. Right. But a leader is somebody who can make those goals and who can keep the promises they make to themselves, and basically has grit. So can you get back up after you're punched in the gut a bunch of times? Most of the time people say, well, things just didn't work out. And that's not the truth. The truth is you couldn't look your kids in the eye and say, daddy gave up because it was hard. But that's why people give up. And if you're that type of person, then you're not a leader. You have to be able to lead yourself. So you have to be able to do what you say, which is why it's so important to watch people's actions and what they do, not what they say. And people say it all the time. Oh, I watch people's actions all the time. Yet they still engage in interpersonal toxic relationships that are barely functional. So again, if you are not somebody who can lead your own life, then how can you even think about leading others? It's what Ambitious AF is all about. It's about taking yourself on the individual level, learning how to eradicate start stop patterns, get up when you're, punched to the ground, getting through to the end of your goals, because most people don't even do that. They stop in the middle and then they'll be like, oh, the coaching program was bad. No, bitch, it was fucking you. You didn't do the work. You decided to give up on yourself. So do you or do you not give up on yourself? Can you lead yourself or can you not? And then to the second part of your question, do people not show up? I hate using the word authentically, but I'll use it because it's just a good illustration so that your listeners can understand is that no, they don't. And I know this because I'll get direct messages all the time, especially about the political posts that I make on social media. And they'll say, this is the number one way that I'll block you is if you say, oh my gosh, you're so brave. I wish I could post the things that you post, but I can't because I work for a woke company or, HR crawls all over my social media. I'm not allowed to. You're the fucking problem. You're the problem with America today and the culture that America is becoming because you are afraid to stick up for what you believe. You are somebody who flies your flag in the family room, loud and proud, like behind closed doors. You wear your red, white, and blue t shirt to the dinner table and you talk all patriotically. And then you go outside and then you're silent because you're scared. And there's no reason for you to be scared. Actually, it's like the silent majority is not a badge of honor whatsoever. If you are part of the silent majority, you're the problem. You need to understand that nobody is throwing bricks into your house. Nobody is burning your business down. None of this is happening to you. So when you say that you would probably receive massive resistance if you vocalized your views, you are fooling yourself. You're fucking delusional. Okay. Nobody's doing any of this stuff to you. People who say they experience extreme resistance are people who get like the shifty eye from a coworker at the water cooler. It's like, that's not massive resistance, dude. Like, sit the fuck down. You don't even know what you're talking about. If you want to be able to take a stronger leadership position in your life or even in this country, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only one person. How could I possibly make a difference? That's exactly how you make a difference. We only need that one person. We need the person who runs for political office, the right person. We need the person who is PTA president. We need the person who's going to run for, local school board. We need the person in the board of county commissioners. We need you at the local level. We need you to stand up and be vocal and use your voice, even if it shakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And great stuff. There's so much to unpack because we only have so much time. So when we spoke on the phone, you brought up something that is talked about a lot in what where I talk about military transition and then
Okay.
being former soft, and that's imposter syndrome. And you had a
Mm.
great take on it. I'd like you to share.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, if you haven't already tuned out at this point, um, so I am a human performance coach. And if you don't know anything about the coaching industry, let me just bring you up to speed really quick. It's an unlicensed industry, unlike medicine or law or real estate or finance, for example, where you actually have to hold a license. In coaching, you don't, which means anybody can basically call themselves a coach. Anybody can put up a website, call themselves a coach, and charge you money for it. And so, what does that mean? It means that in the coaching industry, in my opinion, there are two prominent narratives that get chosen most of all. And one of them is imposter syndrome. Why? Because it's not a diagnosis. And in the coaching industry, unless you are a licensed medical professional, you cannot practice medicine or licensed therapy. And so for coaching, I believe that the coaching industry basically grabs a narrative that they can make millions and millions of dollars on. And imposter syndrome sounds like a diagnosis, doesn't it? It sounds
Right.
like, yeah. And it's not. It's basically made the fuck up. Somebody made it up and they came up with bullet points that resonated with a large group of people. And when you read the bullet points under imposter syndrome, like, feelings of not being good enough, I mean, shit, like 98% of people would raise their hand if you're like, well, do you not feel good enough at times? Yeah, that's me. So
Yeah.
automatically you can relate to this. And then what it's become now, imposter syndrome is a business model. And it's something that coaches can coach to and make money off of. And I don't think it's right. I don't necessarily think that imposter syndrome doesn't exist, but I do think that it's just basically lack of confidence. And what is confidence? I heard this defined, I think, by Ed Milet, which is it's your memory of winning. And if you have no memory of winning in a certain type of arena or aspect, then sure, you're going to have lower confidence in that arena. But the coaching industry calls it imposter syndrome, and they basically leverage your wallet because of it. So I don't want you to think that you have imposter syndrome. I want you to think that you don't have confidence in a certain kind of capacity. And for me, I basically slam people on the internet, social media gurus who talk about confidence all the time in this way. Like they'll say, just go out and get confidence. Well, what if you don't know how to do that? If you don't know how to just go out and get some confidence, now you're already behind the eight ball and now you feel like even more shit. So I don't even talk about confidence. And if I do, it's so rare and I put it in context. I talk more about courage. So to any of you listening right now, I want you to think about all the times where you didn't need a lick of confidence, but you needed a shit ton of courage. And all those times that you grabbed on your courage and not confidence. For example, the time where you rode your bicycle for the first time with no training wheels. I mean, you had no confidence and you were probably like, at the age of 6 or 7, you're like, I could probably die, but I'm going to go forward for it. I'm going to go through it anyhow. Or the time where you jumped off the high dive for the first time. I know for me, when I was climbing up the ladder, it didn't seem that bad until I got to the top. And I remember thinking, who invented a run that only goes halfway down the high dive? Like, who did this? But your friends are down in the pool and they're like, jump, 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 and you're like, okay, and you thought like I might die. Nobody does a cannonball off the high dive for the first time. Everybody just kind of steps.
Yep.
They walk the plank and then they're like, step. And what are you doing? You're forming a memory of winning. And that's what you need to be doing. And the more memories that you form of winning in a certain capacity, the more confidence that you have. And you'll find that that's really just imposter syndrome unpacked. And I gave it to you for free. like
Well,
so
thank
go form memories of winning. It takes courage. And you have courage. You just have to dust off your courage and find your fire.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of courage and stuff, we spoke before about a question I'm going to ask you now about being a strong woman. And you're like, well, if I'm on a podcast or something with other women, they don't ask me that, right? So is it,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I'm going to ask anyway because I'm curious that as a strong woman and as much you do in the social media field, like social media, when I think of women, it's like shaking your ass and being half naked, right? That's like what you're not outspoken about politics and about Second Amendment rights and stuff. So do you get a lot of pushback there? Do you get more pushback from women? Do you get more pushback from men? What's it like to be, to be as vocal as you are?
Ironically, you would think that I would get more pushback from women, but I don't. I get more pushback from men because of the men that give me pushback on social media, it's the men who think that I need to, or women need to present themselves as more ladylike or refined or, more prim and proper. They'll use the excuse, stop posting political messages on this platform. This is a professional platform. You shouldn't be talking about anything like this. Those women who can identify with women like me who basically walk into a room with big dick energy and we can just call it like it is and we can also basically, I don't want to say justify, but we can argue our point with critical thought
Right.
that a lot of people are not prepared for. People are very ill prepared when it comes to defending their position, whether it's political or religious or familial or financial. They're not as educated as they present themselves because when you dive into it a little bit deeper, even if you just peel back one layer, it's like one layer and they can't go any further. So they're basically just regurgitating whatever it is that they hear on the blame stream media, which I like to call them. For me, I try to encourage my community to be critical thinkers and to do their research. I don't care where you sit on the political aisle, by the way. I was a political science major in college, which a lot of people don't know. So I love engaging in political rhetoric. I love sitting across the table from somebody who has a different opinion or thoughts or ideas from me. I really like to lean in with more curiosity rather than contempt. So to those people who are also strong in thought and critical in thought, they welcome somebody like me, whether I'm a woman or not, and they'll be the first
Yeah.
to say, we don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Just tell us what you're going to tell us and contribute to the conversation or shut up, one or the other.
Yeah.
But it's only, and then of course, it's only the people who feel threatened somehow. So if we're going to go like into the female realm, It's the females who declare on the internet, "Know your worth, ladies," or, "I am woman, hear me roar." It's like, shut the fuck up. Put your hand down. Nobody cares about saying anything like that. These are the people who, they talk all the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Those are the first women to slam me. And then they're like little mice. I don't even pay attention to
Yeah.
them. They're like, they're so, I, yeah, like I would say, 10 years ago, it was different. I had a whole different mindset 10 years ago. I paid attention to what everybody thought about me.
Yeah.
I literally could not get my head around it. I was somebody who would win the conversation or want to win the conversation. I wasn't sitting in the conversation as somebody who was, a novice or a learner. I was like, "No, but you're wrong because of this." Or if somebody thought something about me that was wrong or incorrect, or there was a rumor or something that was spread about me, I would like have to try to correct it. But now I'm just like, if you want to hate me, okay,
Right.
I'm totally fine with it. Yeah, I don't even care.
That's so you're answering the questions before I even ask them. But I find
Yeah.
myself, and when I talk to people, like especially former military members that get out and they start putting themselves out on social media or something, and then they get somebody that gives them negative feedback or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
The first, it's like I just want to kick this dude's ass, or like we're violent first, right? And then you can't. So we will not focus on the 98 people that said great things and are on the positive things. You focus on the two assholes who have no idea what they're talking about to begin with, but you spend all of your time on the two and none of your time cultivating the other 98. Have you you said you've gone through that a little bit, but
I
what
did.
advice would you give to some of us who really have a hard time forgetting about the two and just keep moving?
I would say that first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally normal. And I think everybody goes through it. And it all it means to me is that there hasn't been a tipping point in your life yet. So there's two reasons why people hire a coach, in my opinion. One is to give themselves permission to do whatever it is that they want to do in life. And they're looking for permission to do so. And two, to validate the fact that they won't fall flat on their face if they do so. And when you are starting something new, like posting on social media for the first time, um, you should expect to get, more engagements that are, likes and claps. And then you should also expect to get, a thumbs down.
Right. Right.
And the fact that you're not expecting this means that you haven't recalibrated your expectations. So it would be the same like if you go into a job on your very first day and you have the first day job jitters. You don't know what you're doing, just like, people who have been in that job for 10 years. So it's okay to have jitters. And that's what people think. Like it's not okay to go through this phase in your life. It's totally fine to go through the phase, but you just have to determine how much of it is unproductive and ineffective in your life. I mean, so do you want to continue to have it be unproductive and ineffective? That's a choice, by the way. It's a decision. Or do you want to decide to sort of mute it down a little bit more? So I don't want to completely come across as somebody who says you should never listen to the negativity, because I think it's good to expose yourself to people that, the people who are being negative, or, the people who are saying those types of things. Are they speaking the truth? Are they noticing something about you that maybe you need to change? Or is it just
That's
somebody
right.
who's, behind their computer, behind their laptop, and they're in their mommy's fucking basement and they're just, pounding away because they have no fucking life. So you
Right.
have to delineate between, who are the real haters, who are the people who have no life, or who are the people who are actually trying to tell you something like a hard truth about yourself.
That's true.
But I think, yeah, like, so for me, there was a tipping point where I had to get to a place where I was so focused on my goals and I had absolute tunnel vision that I literally had no time for the other bullshit.
Right.
Like, and that tipping point was crucial for me actually. It was a point in my life where I think friendship breakups also are a thing.
Yeah.
And I think people should engage in them regularly. So every time you recalibrate your own baseline, you need to do sort of a cleanse of your inner circle. Who's around your circle? Who's not? Who do you need to be friends with? Who you're not friends with yet? Who needs to know you at this point in your life? And who's basically going to pull you the fuck down? I think more people are loyal to drama than
Hmm.
they are to themselves. And it goes for men too.
Yep.
Yeah, 110%. Like, well, I can't get rid of him. He was my best friend since the second grade. Yeah, but he's like a fucking piece of shit in his life.
Yep.
And he's also got a bunch of interpersonal toxic relationships. And if
Yep.
you are that, if that energy is that close to you in your life, you will begin to absorb it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
okay to do that. You have to give yourself permission.
Yep, that's right. So it's funny, when I was dealing with early on, when people would give me feedback, negative feedback, my first response was to go attack, right? Attack, attack, attack.
Yeah.
But when I changed my perspective and I would say something instead, I would say, "Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate that. Could you elaborate more on what you're saying so I can get better?" One, I'd either start a really good conversation, or two, they would just disappear because they didn't want to have a critical conversation with me.
Right.
They didn't
Right.
actually have feedback. They had they didn't like something that I did, and they found something to attack. So
Right.
once I changed my, the way I looked at it and went into it with a little bit more grace, I guess,
Mm.
I found that I was a lot happier on the other side. uh, I don't think anybody would argue that you are a strong woman, right? You're an opinionated, and I think that's a good thing. I see nothing wrong with it. But that leads me to something we talked about and something you said: men need to be men. And when you said that, like sirens were going off and like confetti was popping, because I agree 100% that masculinity is getting killed in today's society. Like, it blows my mind that that I don't think, there's obviously a balance there. I don't want asshole men out there treating women bad and being abusive, but it's okay to hold the door open and say yes, ma'am, and thank you, ma'am, and having just basic manners and being a man that's willing to protect a woman and a child. And too often I sit back and I see stuff on social media where a bunch of men are standing around watching a woman get beat up, or
Mm.
watching stuff happen to children. Why men supposedly are standing around watching, and I don't know why that is. What are your thoughts on it?
Like I said, um, most people look for permission in order to move forward in any capacity, which is why you see less men nowadays acting like actual men. And so, how do I define that? Similar to what you just said, which is someone who's not afraid to expose their testosterone, basically, and be the man in the relationship, for example, because that's kind of where we're going here. It's in the relationship. So, nowadays we're seeing biological men being dressed very feminine type, like being told that this is okay. Um, you know, and that if you're not okay with that, to hell with you, then you should be punished, like I was talking about earlier. Um, it's okay to be men.
Yeah.
It's okay. And it's okay to be a man in a relationship. And actually, I take a shot at women who accept beta men, right? So I just learned this actually from a nail seal buddy of mine. You have the alpha, you have the beta, and then you have the omega, right? And the alpha male is the one that women, especially somebody who's an alpha female like myself, is longing for. It's the alpha male. It's the one who brings all the testosterone to the relationship, right? It's the one who can allow, if you bring all the testosterone to the relationship, what happens is for the alpha female, it allows us to bring all of our femininity to the relationship. We can basically let the guard down and we can love men in the way that they need to be loved, which is women, if you are listening to this, your man does not need to be loved the way women are loved. That is not accurate. Men need to be empowered. That is how you love them. You empower them to go out and to be, the dominant force of the family, to be the head of the family, to lead the family and to lead the relationship. You can't love men the way that you love women. And that's the problem, is that women are loving men the way women feel like they need to be loved. And now we've got a bunch of beta fucking men out there running
Right.
around who can't make decisions, who aren't escalating their careers, who aren't bringing home, the bacon. And now the women are having to overcompensate for all of that. And what does that lead? That leads your women treating you like a little fucking bitch that you are, because you're a little fucking bitch if you're a beta. That's exactly what you are. And, then you have the omega men, which are, sort of the opposite. These are the ones who bring the wrong kind of violence into relationships. These are the men who can't control their emotions. They tend to be narcissistic. They yell quite a bit for all the wrong reasons. That's that stuff. But yeah, men need to be men, and it's not enough to just post on social media your beard growth progression. That's not you being a man, or
Right.
talking about your TRT shit or whatever. Like you're touting it out loud or something like that. Not, I do see men out there who are like, yes, this is what I did for my TRT. This is how old I am. I'm, under the direction and guidance of a licensed medical doctor. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the men who are out there, like they're getting another tattoo, but they're not out being patriotic. They're not standing up for what they believe in. They're not being vocal whatsoever. And they're out at dinner with their family and somebody says some shit and they don't even stick up for their family, which is exactly why, during COVID, we saw an enormous amount of women coming to the front of the table. We saw them showing up at school board meetings. We saw them
Okay.
basically becoming mama bears because
Yeah.
the men didn't. Yeah, they spun in circles. So we actually learned who was a man versus who wasn't. And toxic masculinity is not, it's not even a thing. It's not, masculinity is not toxic. It's what's needed. This country is off course. It's been off course for the last couple of years. And it's going to continue to go off course if men do not stand up and be men. I can promise you, women are looking for you to lead. We need you to lead. You need to be the men. We need you. We need
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cannot be more emphatic about this.
And I think, the real crux of it is those men or those people in those family units are raising other boys that won't become men, right?
Yep.
I have these conversations all the time with my oldest son about the expectation of a man is and things that you should be able to do about why we hunt and why we fish and why we gather and why we say why we are respectful to women and men, but the the it's gonna only get worse unless we do some course correction here and understand it's okay. It's okay to be a man. Just don't be an asshole unless you need to. Sometimes you need to.
Sometimes you do need to. And,
Yeah.
let's just also realize that the generation of participation trophies is
Oh
now
yeah.
growing up and having children of their own.
Right.
So this is not going to course correct overnight.
No.
It's going to take 40 years, 50 years. It's going to take several generations to
Yeah.
course
Yeah.
correct, but you need to do what you can now so that at least you ripple the effect through your family or through those in which you have, touch points with or the people who are in arm's reach. And I promise you, I talk all the time about making your life purposefully harder. I say these words all the time. Don't just make your life harder, but make it purposefully harder. And when you do that, so for example, if you are someone who's married and you go on date night with your wife, talk about that out loud.
Hmm.
If you're somebody who, works out every day, talk about that out loud. If you're somebody who spends uninterrupted time with your kids and you're present with your kids, talk about it out loud.
Yeah.
What do people look for in life? What have I been saying? They look for permission. They're looking for permission. And if you talk about how you make your life purposefully harder out loud, it gives other people the silent permission to do the same in their life, period.
Right. Right. And once they start doing it, then they won't be silent about it. At some point, they'll start talking about it. And like you said, you'll see the ripple effect of the rock that was dropped in the pool.
Exactly right.
But yeah, and you're it's going to take a while, but I don't think we haven't got bad enough yet to start recovering, right? I think we're just now starting to we're not there yet. There's going to be like I use the example all the time of there's going to be a blue collar revolution in this country to where the guy that changes your oil and changes your tires and can do the simple things that a man used to be able to do, those
Mhm.
men aren't out there. They're starting to die. The electricians, the plumbers, AI is never going to put in a septic tank. So when I talk to my son about his future life, I'm like, you're going to be a plumber and you can make way more than this. All these people that went and got degrees in computer science and tech, because they can't fucking change a light bulb without help. So, uh, we're not completely there yet, but I think it's coming maybe sooner than maybe probably in our lifetime. I would say we're going to hit a wall where we're like, where the hell are all the men at that can do things, right? Right. If you got anything on that,
Yeah. I think as Americans, it is now or never for America. We have to stand up, we have to fight, we have to be vocal, we have to push back against the most egregious tyrannical oppression, which is abject censorship. You have to be willing to fight for what you believe. Um, with respect to gun control and wokeness and allowing children to change their genders. This is fucking stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it, but not everybody is speaking up. 110%. And we also learned, through COVID, which jobs were essential, if you
Right.
will, not the jobs they called essential, the actual jobs that were essential versus the ones that were not, right? Nobody needs a fucking point guard in the NBA,
Right.
but we need our doctors and we need our nurses and we need our electricians and we need our plumbers and we need those people. Those are the necessary workers. And
Yeah.
and I'll stop there.
Yeah, we could talk for quite some time, I think, on this subject and the country and all the wokeness, if you will. But we'll move on
Oh my God. Yeah.
to save the listeners and
Yeah.
some
It's a
time.
podcast for another time.
But it brings us all to a podcast, yours, Ambitious AF. I'm kind of, where did that come out of? Like, what do you hope to accomplish with that? I love how you kind of people ask you what the AF stands for. I mean, obviously, I knew immediately what it stood
Dude,
for.
because you're
Tell us
not
about
fucking
it.
stupid.
Yeah.
That is the DM that I get the most besides, do you coach people like me? They're like, what does AF stand for? I always respond like, my stuff is not for you.
Yeah.
If you don't know, please just scroll away. So I want to say, so Ambitious AF is less than 2 years old, by the way. Like
Okay.
it's like brand new. Yeah. Like we're in the Genesis. About 2-ish years ago, I decided to take the muzzle off and talk politically out loud and
Successful.
really talk about, how I talk to myself.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. It was the week of July 4th, actually, that happened. And I doubled my social media following, if that tells you anything, in less than a year. And I started talking about ambition because I noticed that there isn't actually a lot of research on ambition. Ambition tends to be more of an outcome when you look at the literature, whereas grit and perseverance, for example, narcissism, obsession, all of that stuff has multiple pieces of literature, but ambition doesn't. And I found that interesting because, I'll find articles like, how do you describe an ambitious leader and things like that? But there's no actual, well, I don't want to say there's none. There's little clinical research done on ambition. And I was just like, what is all of this about? And I started doing my own type of research into it. And I was like, well, what's my definition of this? And I started posting on social media. And then one video at the very end, I said, let this be the permission that you need to go be ambitious as fuck. And I was like, oh shit, maybe that's a thing. And then I just posted the social media video and I was like, well, let me see if I get any responses to what I said. And I got a couple of handfuls of responses. And then I started to see that it was taking off. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think we have something. And so Ambitious AF is a community that is completely organic. So this grew from what the community was telling me they wanted to hear more about. It's the way that they were responding to my message and the way that I was phrasing it and positioning it in the market. And I looked, and Ambitious AF wasn't trademarked. So we can't officially trademark ambitious as fuck because you're not allowed to do like with the bad language. The government has like a no rule. But as this is being recorded, we've officially filed under, I think, US 41 for
That's
the
awesome.
Ambitious AF trademark. Yep. So we're going to go after it and I'm going to fight really hard for it. So that is in the works. And it's basically a mindset. It's basically a lifestyle. It's how you get up and live. It's all based on a zero deviation mentality. So whether that means, setting your goals or, you're exercising or the way that you approach your finances and spirituality and mental toughness, it's all based on zero deviation. And so I've taken this out into the market with my client, my personal one-on-one clients. We're now moving into very large organizations with Ambitious AF. I made it into a podcast because over COVID, somebody reached out and they were like, where can I buy your book and where can I listen to your podcast? And I talk about this on one of my podcasts, but I took a sticky note and I wrote on the sticky note, write a book, start a podcast. And I put this sticky note up on my laptop screen and I looked at it every single day. And it wasn't for a year. And then I started the podcast because I was like, what am I going to talk about? What is it going to be? And how am I going to, what's the podcasting all about? And I was diving into
Right.
the weeds like a little too far. But really, it's me, it's a microphone, and it's a record button. And that's really what it is. And I've kept the first podcast episode as is. I haven't touched it. It's not audio engineered. It's in its original form so that you can go back and listen to what it's like to be a novice when you start.
Yeah, right.
So, you really look stupid as fuck, but you've got to be willing to look stupid as fuck when you put yourself out into the market because that's the only way that you're going to learn and iterate. So that's kind of a little more about Ambitious AF, and yeah, the podcast is doing really great. It's taken off in a way that I didn't even imagine. But now in my brain, I use the podcast as a way to talk to um, my family generations that aren't even born yet.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh
really
yeah.
my letters to them that I want them to be able to listen to this message and to know, you know, what it is that we were going through during this time when I was filming and recording. And whatever it is that they're going through, I think the mental toughness message resonates and ripples over time.
Yeah.
It's timeless.
Yeah. That's awesome. I've never thought of it that way. That is pretty cool. It's like a, yeah. Uh, yeah, breadcrumbs to your life is
Yeah.
what it'll be to the next generation. So that's
Yep.
very cool. And the last question, everybody gets it. If you could
Okay.
go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give?
Oh my. Shoot. I had already made so mistakes by then. So many. um Actually, I don't think it would be a piece of advice. I look at it as more of an insight. If I could just whisper something into my ear at the age of 20, I would tell myself, you're going through this for a reason. And I know you don't know what it is right now, but keep going through it. Know that it will eventually end when you make the decision for it to end, but you're learning things that are going to help you 20 years from now. And I just want you to know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what I didn't know. I didn't think it was gonna be okay. And I think a lot of people, like, if you're listening right now and you're going through something and you're spinning in circles and, you put your head on your pillow at night and you're praying to fall asleep before you fall apart, I just want you to hear my voice and understand that whatever you're going through will end. And that's what people don't realize is that there is an ending point, and it's a decision point, it's an inflection where you decide, "I'm tired of this bullshit.
Yep.
I don't want to deal with it anymore. I want my life to be different." And sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before that happens. But rock bottom is such a beautiful place. And if you ever reach it, it's like, you never want to get there again. You never want to be there again. And if you pull yourself out of the ashes, which you can do, it's so beautiful. And then you come to a point where you can begin to teach others what you know. You've been told that it's for people with PhDs. You've been told it's for people who are trust fund babies. It's for people who aren't you. That's what you've been told by the people you trust, by the people who you were like, you were 5 years old and somebody looked into your eyes and they're like, Yuma, you can be anything you want. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. Dream big. And then at one point in time, Yuma grows up to be whatever age, but those same people look at you and they're like, listen, Yuma, astronaut's not for you, right?
Right.
Doctor's not for you. Engineer, that's not for you. Let's be more realistic. And that's what we're told. We're told to be realistic. We're told to go through whatever, I don't know. I was told you graduate high school, you go to college, you find a husband, you have some babies, you have a job, if you're, and then you die.
Right.
And hopefully you do all of those steps and hopefully you're happy. But those are the steps that you take because those are the realistic steps. And I'm here to completely eradicate that from you and tell you that success is for people like you because success is a decision. It's a number of decisions that you can make repeatedly where you keep deciding to be better than you were the day before. So I would go back and I would just tell myself like it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's probably the number one thing that I tell people, veterans that are struggling with suicide or divorce or problems with their kids. Keep going. Keep going. Initiate movement. That's something you say in the military. Just get up. You have to move. If you don't move, stay stationary, you're going to die. So keep moving. But
Can I say
uh,
something to that really
yeah,
quick?
yeah,
Do you mind?
yeah, yeah.
So, the suicide narrative is it's important, but I do think that it tends to be positioned incorrectly. I think that we spend more time reading social media posts saying things like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." But we know that, especially in the military, those who die by suicide die by firearm. And it is not because they have all of these flashbacks, from war. It's not any of those reasons, which a lot of times when you're a civilian, that's what you tend to think, but they just can't deal with the flashbacks. It's not true. It has to do with the sense of belonging.
Hmm.
And, people who die by suicide, whether you're in the military or not, they don't know how to live. And I just want to remind those people out there, if you're on the edge right now, if you're that person, that this is happening for you right now. Like you're experiencing this so that you can overcome. It's your obligation to build a journey of overcoming. And I promise you that whether you are given the title of leader or not, you are leading and other people are following. That goes for the people who are watching you on the sidelines of your kids' football game. That goes for like the gas attendant at the service station who's watching you. There are people who are watching you that you don't even know are watching you, and they will make decisions in their life based on what you do with yours.
Hmm.
So make those decisions good and make the decision to build a journey of overcoming. You deserve it. The other people who are watching you deserve it. And this is happening for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I can't put it any other way. Like these are sad statistics, and it's your obligation. It's your duty to overcome.
right,
Period.
right. I love it. I thank you so much for coming on here. I mean, one minute you're cussing at everybody, the next minute you're telling us that we can overcome it. I love it. All right. Because that's life. Life is messy. Life is messy. Life
Life
isn't
is
linear.
so messy. Yeah, like stop
It's,
expecting not to get punched in the teeth.
yeah, yeah. It's not
You're gonna
linear.
get punched in the teeth.
That's right.
Expect it. It's
That's right.
coming. Just
That's
don't
right.
stay down on the ground. Get up.
Absolutely. And for all you guys out there watching, make sure you like, share, subscribe. I am like 2 away from 500 subscribers on YouTube, which is a big deal. So take 32 seconds, not even 2 seconds, and hit subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Erin, thanks again. It's been awesome. And we'll catch everybody else next week.
My pleasure.